across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, they think it's all over, and it is now. We are not going to be bringing it home. We are out now. So the final score was 2-1 to Argentina. So they have, it's going to be an Argentina and Spain final on Sunday. But I mean, those goals, I don't know if you were watching it, maybe you weren't, but their goals were impressive. You have to say that for Argentina, they really were. So that's it. That's it. It's all done. Anyway, good evening. I'm a little bit fed up about that, but there you go. It's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And, of course, in the Talkback hour, that is your chance to do exactly that. And I just want to talk to you about social media, actually, at midnight, because Twitter is 20 years old today. And I want to know from you, really, basically, has social media been a force for good or a force for evil? Because I suppose it's been a force for both, hasn't it? I mean, you may be somebody who's got, I don't know, a WhatsApp group for your local neighbourhood, and that's worked really well for you. Or you may be somebody who's been able to find like-minded Lego enthusiasts or whatever it is online. But we also know that people, criminals, find that help and support and succour online as well. So I just want to know if, in the round, do you think it's been a force for good or a force for bad? Because I don't really use it, because for me, I found that it was too negative. I didn't like it. I don't need to see that stuff. I don't need to have those things said to me. I don't need those comments. So I've just, and sadly, because a lot of lovely people also would follow me on Twitter and say lovely things, but it just became one of those things where I thought, I just can't. Why am I putting myself through this? So for me, I think that it is a game of two halves, if you excuse the football pun, but it is a situation where it can be a force for good and it can be a force for evil. But I'd like to know what you think in the round. Overall, is the world a better place for having this social media, or is it a worse place for having it? So not just the messaging apps, not just the Twitter and Truth Social or whatever they're called, but also to do with things like TikTok and all those things that young people get involved in. So that's what I want to talk to you about at midnight. So do give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Those calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. Right, coming up on the rest of the programme, we have John Boothman joining us, a political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland, to go through the papers for tomorrow. We're going to be speaking to Professor John Hardy, which is going to be really interesting. This is about the groundbreaking new Alzheimer's drug, so we're going to be talking to him about that. Keir Giles joins us to talk about this. This is the Russia threat to the UK, and we're being advised now as Brits to be prepared, that we've got to start doing things like having a wind-up radio or some bottles of water, some spare food and things like that in case of many different attacks. This is the Russia plan, but many different attacks against this country. So we'll be talking about that as well. Of course, today was the last PMQs, wasn't it, for Keir Starmer? This was his last hurrah. Keir Starmer told MPs, this is the end of my political journey, except that he continues, of course, to be an MP. And he said that he won't be stepping down from there, which I guess would cause a by-election and then, cause problems for everybody. But he said this is the end of his political journey. And I guess what he means by that is he'll continue on being an MP for a little while and then bow out. Because Andy Burnham is taking over as of Monday. Well, he's taken part in his last PMQs and said that he's proud to leave the country in a better state than he found it. So some key achievements include launching Great British Energy, banning unfair evictions through the Renters' Rights Act, and ending long-running public sector strikes. Internationally, he rebuilt broken relationships with the EU, allies and Ukraine, as well as keeping the UK out of the Iran war. However, his legacy remains highly divided. While his administration focused on long-term economic growth, voters reacted sharply to heavy tax rises and rising unemployment, and his decision to cut winter fuel payments, that was his first big decision, was an absolute catastrophe for him. That was the beginning of the end for Keir Starmer. I think we can track it to that exact decision, and that was within days of becoming Prime Minister. He shot himself right in the foot with that. But what did Keir Starmer achieve? Did he do any good? Has he left the country in a better state than he found it? Well, joining me to discuss this further is Petrie Hosken, author and journalist and former BBC senior correspondent. Andrew, good to see you. Thank you for joining me. Has he left the country in a better place than he found it?
Well, I think that's a moot point. It depends what side of the fence you're out on. I think that he certainly saved the Labour Party. The Labour Party was in all kinds of mess, when he became leader back in 2020. And he turned the Labour Party around from losing elections, of being led by Jeremy Corbyn, which was considered to be a disaster by the Labour Party, to taking it to victory only 4 years later, in the general election of July 2024. And he had to deal with a lot of problems. So, for example, there was the anti-Semitism problem within the Labour Party. And of course, that culminated in a report, a very devastating report by by a particular body that deals with, race relations, that found there was institutional anti-Semitism within the Labour Party, and it resulted in nearly 300 members of the Labour Party being expelled. So that was quite a traumatic thing, a very difficult thing for any party leader to have to deal with, that kind of allegation. And I think he dealt with it with aplomb. And he took the party to a huge majority, getting a huge majority of more than 170 in the election. I mean, of course, people will say afterwards he didn't know what to do with this majority. He didn't know what to do with this new parliament, and he dithered and made mistakes. And I think the interesting thing about Keir Starmer is that we're used to prime ministers being brought down by a huge, big thing, a big scandal, a big misjudgment. One thinks of David Cameron having to resign after gambling on Brexit in 2016 and having to resign, or felt that he had to resign after that because it was a big political miscalculation. Then, of course, we had Boris Johnson, who made an enormous number of mistakes as Partygate, and then, of course, his own cabinet and ministers got fed up with him and demanded that he went. Liz Truss, absolutely blew a hole in the British economy with her so-called disastrous so-called mini budget. So there was no question about why she had to go. I think that the odd thing about Keir Starmer is it seems to be an accumulation of small things that brought him down, not one big thing. There was a sort of accumulation of misjudgments and dithering, and a feeling among his parliamentarians that he wasn't up to the job. Wasn't any one big thing that eventually sort of brought him down in the end.
Because it's interesting to hear Keir Starmer speak. You would immediately think he's the proudest. He said he's the proudest of ending the two-child benefit cap. Well, he was opposed to that, and actually it was his backbenchers that forced that through. So, but he's now claiming that as one of his victories.
Well, he was the Prime Minister. He didn't have to agree to it. I think he let himself be persuaded by members of Parliament. I don't think there's anything wrong in that. I don't think there's anything wrong in a Prime Minister being persuaded by his members to do something he may have been against. In the end, he did it. And so he can, as the Prime Minister, claim credit for it, I think. I think we're churlish to sort of say, well, some people said he was against it, but he still did it. he's mended the broken fences with Europe, for example. I think his foreign policy has been successful. I mean, whatever you think of what he's done at home, I don't think you can argue that he didn't, for example, show unequivocal support for Ukraine. I mean, famously, after President Zelensky was very badly treated in the White House in that disgraceful thing we saw with President Trump and J.D. Vance, who's vice president, the first person to really see him and visit him and say, come over, was Keir Starmer, and had him the following day in Downing Street and treated him very well, and it took him out to Downing Street and showed him to people who cheered him to the rafters. So that was quite a deft and quite risky, considering what a volatile character Trump is and how unstable America feels at the moment as an ally. To have done that really is quite a courageous thing to do, I think. And I think that his attempts, I mean, for example, today, I mean, it's probably with the World Cup and all the rest of it, it's one thing that's sort of gone unnoticed. But in Gibraltar, for example, the border between Spain and Gibraltar, and customs have been dismantled as a way of, so he has done things abroad as well, I think. And the economy, the economy isn't doing too badly. I mean, there is a black hole, in the finances for a number of reasons. I mean, I think they did. I mean, I'm not sort of advocating for the Labour Party. I'm not saying that, but just sort of impartially, they did inherit a bit of a mess from the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party sort of collapsed in on itself after 14 years of a series of bungles, really, and so they had to inherit that scenario as well from 14 years of the Conservative government. And even if it had been sort of good government, there would still be a legacy for any incoming government after such a long period of time to deal with.
It's interesting to note in a survey that I was reading earlier on, Andrew, that 30% of people think his greatest achievement was in something that he didn't do, and that is getting the UK embroiled in the Iran US-Israel war. That showed a real strength at the time, again, as you're saying about Donald Trump, and he's obviously made him pay for that ever since with snide comments and nasty talking about Keir Starmer. But that according to this survey, the majority, the highest number, have said his greatest achievement was not getting us dragged in to that militarily.
That's a very good argument, absolutely, because, I mean, he would have been under great pressure to involve the UK. In fact, he was, as we know, they were demanding use of certain bases at Fairford and, in Crete and all the rest of it. And so we know that he came under great pressure, but he resisted that. And it must be very difficult to deal with someone like Donald Trump, who is all over the place and aggressive and says what he thinks about people. He's been very unpleasant about Keir Starmer, and he sort of brushed it off his shoulder like a sort of bit of loose dandruff, didn't he? He didn't let it bother him. And I think that his qualities as a man, I think he's always, I don't know him, but he's always come across to me as a very decent bloke, a bit too nice for his own good. And I think the problem that he's had is with this 170 odd majority, if you think about it, is that if it had just been a normal political situation, if you didn't have a situation in which reform, for example, was seen to be challenging both the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, of challenging Labour in these key seats, Labour probably could have bungled along. If they didn't have that kind of insurgent kind of powerful political party on the rise, they could have probably bungled along with Keir Starmer for a few years, maybe got into the next election, maybe won the next election. But I think that the Labour Party thought the same
people who jumped ship, the Keir Starmer ship to the Andy Burnham ship, of course, were the ones in the Commons today applauding Keir Starmer, which is, you're not supposed to applaud in the Commons, but the hypocrisy was ripe in the air, wasn't it?
Well, that's politics. It's actually most sort of human organisations, isn't it, where you're very nice about the boss that's being given the boot, although you might not have liked them very much.
Yeah, that's very true.
And you say all kinds of nice things at their leaving do, where before you've been slagging them off monthly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of human nature.
Yeah, I guess so. And they're all being very nice to him now, even Kemi Badenoch. But look, I mean,
I thought Kemi Badenoch was very generous to him. I thought
she was as well.
She was very graceful, I thought, and showed great, character. I think that during the Prime Minister's questions, he thanked her for her personal kindnesses. For example, when his house was attacked, and when his brother died, she personally got in contact with Keir Starmer and said, offered her sympathies, which shows great humanity, and he was very gracious about that himself in the comments. I think she was again very sort of kind, I thought, to him today in a very difficult, what was a very, very difficult and embarrassing circumstance, really, when you think about it. I mean, he's being booted out.
Yeah.
And it's sort of very British, isn't it, to pretend that it's all
it's all jolly fine. Yeah.
It's we really wanted you to hang around. We're terribly sorry about all this. We can't imagine how it's happened, but toodaloo.
Yeah.
But it would have been deep down sort of a difficult thing to do. I mean, to actually you've been given the boot, and yet you've got to go up and be the Prime Minister for one last time.
What do you think? How do you think he'll be reflected in the history books? What will, in 10, 20 years' time, be people saying about the Keir Starmer premiership?
That's a really good question, because I can't think of any precedent for somebody just leaving like this, leaving the prime ministership. I mean, they're normally dragged out by the, clawing down the carpet, or having to resign in the most humiliating circumstances. The way that he's sort of gently given up, his office and allowed the ambitious Andy Burnham to come in and take over is unprecedented. I've never heard or seen anything like it at all. So I think the way he's left office, I think, will be something that historians will. I mean, it's always a foolish thing to predict what future historians are going to say about any of us or anything. I mean, let's put that first of all. I mean, I can just about imagine what tomorrow's newspapers are going to say.
Yeah, quite.
Let alone historians in 100 years or 50 years' time. But I think they will look at how he managed, for example, Brexit. He was the Brexit spokesman, so how he handled that, how he handled Jeremy Corbyn, the most difficult period. They'll look at how he saved the Labour Party. He became the leader of a party that was virtually unelectable, had become a basket case virtually under Jeremy Corbyn. That was the right and left were at each other's throats. There were allegations of anti-Semitism. It was looking like the Conservative Party would be in power for decades under Boris Johnson, didn't it? In the 2019 election.
Interestingly, Jeremy Corbyn was one of only a couple of people who didn't stand for Keir Starmer today in the Commons.
Well, yeah. Well, that I think says more about Jeremy Corbyn than it does Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
I mean, he did stop Jeremy Corbyn from becoming a Labour MP in 2023. He ruled against Jeremy Corbyn. I think he realised that Jeremy Corbyn was a toxic thing for the public. I mean, I remember covering the 2019 election and going around the so-called red wall seats, in North Wales when I was working in the BBC and in the Midlands. And on the doorstep when I would be with a Labour candidate, it would be often, well, I normally vote Labour. I like you, but I don't like Jeremy Corbyn, and I won't be voting for Labour this time around. Get rid of him, and we'll see you next time around. That was the reality on the doorstep. That was it. And I think that's what Keir Starmer had to deal with. And he was remarkably ruthless in dealing with the left and with the alleged anti-Semites, because he had to make Labour electable. And when you think about Labour Party history, Labour Party's only been going since 1900, really, when when his, erstwhile predecessor, Keir Hardy started the Labour Party, but he's only the fourth Labour Prime Minister to ever achieve a majority, which is remarkable when you think. When you have Clement Attlee, and Harold Wilson, and then Tony Blair, and of course then Keir Starmer was the fourth one.
But it's not really much of a legacy, is it? I mean, okay, so he brought it's a legacy for the party rather than for the country.
Yes, that's fair.
And I think that he just even if he did do good things, he just didn't communicate them at all, and that was a big mistake.
I think so. I think he was very badly let down by comms. Yeah, sure. He couldn't get his message across.
No.
I think that everyone said he was brilliant in private, but when shoved in front of a microphone, he would just sort of freeze. I mean, he would buffer like a sort of a dodgy Wi-Fi. And so that he didn't have the sort of presentational gifts.
But he was a barrister, Andrew. I mean, you would imagine that he had to communicate in court, so it can't be that difficult.
Well, he did, yes, he was. But, I mean, you get barristers and barristers. You get people who are quite stolid characters who do tax law, and then you get the flamboyant libel QCs and things who are different performers altogether. So there are different kinds of lawyers, just like there's different kinds of politicians and journalists and presenters. And I think that he for this modern day of the 24-hour news cycle of social media, he didn't have that kind of pizzazz, that you need. These days, people expect. I mean, people say, "Oh, I don't want. I just want someone who can run the country." Well, they don't really. They still want pop stars and and film stars and people with charisma. They unfortunately do. I mean, I particularly distrust a lot of politicians like that, because I just want people to run things. I don't want people to sort of
tap dance into the Commons.
Or tell me about how to live my life, or make
small government, please.
Vainglorious speeches about things. So I think that he's a different. He was a different kind of fish who didn't sort of fit in with today's politics and media. I think that was his big the thing that really let him down. I think at the end of the day, I think Andy Burnham, he does appear to have those gifts and that charisma that people are looking for. So we'll see how he gets on.
Yeah, let's see how he gets on. He starts on Monday and then immediately goes on holiday. But there you go.
Brilliant.
Yeah, nice work if you can get it. Andrew, thank you very much indeed. Andrew Hosken there, author and journalist and former BBC senior correspondent. Quick break, back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock, and of course we do now know that far from it coming home, we're coming home. There is no World Cup for us this year. We've been knocked out in the semi-final, and joining me to discuss this is Kevin Hatchard, who's TalkSport commentator, fresh from the commentary mic, feeling really bleh.
Yeah, obviously a devastating result. They did so much right, England, for the first hour. I thought they managed the physical aspect of the game really well in the first hour. Argentina tried to rile them, tried to get under their skin. Largely, England dealt with that. And having got the goal with Anthony Gordon, you then wanted them to push on and get the second goal. But these games don't happen in a vacuum. And this Argentina team has won the World Cup in Qatar 4 years ago. They've won the Copa America twice under Lionel Scaloni, their current coach. They know how to get through these ties. They know how to get off the canvas, and they did it again. And the way they took control of the game was very impressive. Jed Spence has to make a brilliant challenge. Jordan Pickford makes a wonderful save down low to his right. Alexis McAllister hits the post twice. That's the kind of pressure that England were under, and Thomas Tuchel tried to react to that by making changes. But England got deeper and deeper and deeper, which is a natural thing in that kind of situation, and it cost them.
It really did, and it was such a shame. I mean, I found the first half really frustrating, actually, because there was a lot of stopping and starting, wasn't there? There was a lot of, like you said, there's some play going on there, not just football.
Yeah.
A couple of people knocked a couple of feet trampled on, a couple of things. So it was stop and start, wasn't it? And the ref was always getting involved, and then you had the Argentinians sort of begging to say that that was the wrong thing that should have been done, and that he should have got a red card, not a yellow card. So there was a lot of that going on, which is just so frustrating, because it was anything but football, and I get really annoyed when I see, because I'm a rugby fan normally, and
right.
that's a very different.
It's a faster game. Rugby, isn't
no,
it?
it's not. But nobody falls on the ground crying about their ankle either. So I found that I found that a little bit frustrating. But then it just appeared that Argentina just had the England sort of bogged down in Argentine's favour.
Yeah.
They absolutely just couldn't get away from the goal.
It's a tricky thing. Once you take that lead, the idea is that you try and bring them onto you and you hit them on the counter, but there wasn't enough from England to be able to do that. They didn't have the outlets to be able to really turn them back the other way. That's what you're looking to do and get that second goal. They were going to make changes, and then they made more defensive ones. Dan Burn comes on, Ezri Konsa comes on. They're trying to see it through in the way that they did against Mexico at the Azteca. And this is the life of a manager, because you make those changes against Mexico, you're lauded, everybody says you did brilliantly, you know, you saw it through, one of England's best ever World Cup performances. He's tried to do it against Argentina and it hasn't worked. And
so he should have gone for more attack players rather than defensive players.
It's a balance. Because
it was
really difficult.
He had 6 defenders on the pitch at one point.
Yeah, I mean, he lost Reece James as well, so it was a bit of a rejig there. So, yeah, that's what you'd want. And he brought on Marcus Rashford. He was hoping to kind of get that pace the other way. But these games don't just happen in a vacuum. And you've got the greatest ever to do it in Lionel Messi. He finds Enzo Fernandez for the equaliser. It's a wonderful cross then for Lautaro Martinez
they were brilliant
to get the winner. So, you know, you're up against elite quality, the best quality maybe we've seen. That's tough to take, because I think the thing is, people will look at Argentina's campaign and they'll say, well, against Cape Verde they weren't great, against Egypt they nearly went out, against England they weren't great, but there's something in a team being able to find a way each and every time, and this is what Argentina do, and they don't panic.
No, that's the thing I was thinking as well, because they were 1-0 down for quite a chunk of the game, weren't they? And if that was me, I'd be like, oh, just what's the point? I've given up. Which is probably why I'm...
Maybe that's why you're
one
not
of the many
playing
reasons.
The World Cup. Maybe.
Not playing the World Cup. But the psychology of the game, I mean, it's quite incredible that they don't give up and that they do keep fighting until the whistle. And Argentina were just determined they were going to win. I mean, they went onto the pitch knowing they were going to win in their hearts and their minds, and they pulled it off.
They are an extraordinary unit. And you look at what Scaloni, who was a good player but an unremarkable player, really, but he's come up through youth football, development football, and he's come into the senior job. He's done a sensational job. And the funny thing is, actually, you look at now ahead to their final against Spain on Sunday, that is 2 coaches that are not seen as elite guys who've done wonders in the club game. You know, Luis de la Fuente came up through the youth ranks with Spain. He's known some of these players for a long, long time now, and Scaloni has been able to patiently build this as well. So they've had similar paths and had similar success. I mean, these are winning machines. These are teams that are just not used to losing, are used to being able to find a way to win.
You could see they weren't going to lose. That was the whole mindset.
Against Egypt, they were out, effectively. You know, they were 2-0 down, and it got so close to the wire that Messi was in floods of tears at the end, because he saw how close he came to the end of his World Cup career.
Are they going to win on Sunday?
I think they might, you know. Spain were brilliant against France, absolutely no doubt about it. I think that's the best individual performance in terms of one game that I've seen at this tournament, the way they nullified France, the way they completely controlled the game. But this Argentina team, I'm so loath to bet against them, because they have Messi, they have Julian Alvarez, they have guys like Lautaro Martinez who can come on and get a late winner. They've got real grit and determination in that midfield. And again, I come back to this idea that you look at Argentina and think they're quite ordinary, you can get at them, there's this weakness, this weakness, this weakness. Oh, they won.
Yeah.
This is what the good teams do.
Yeah, and that John, my producer, did say to me, if they score once, they'll score twice, and the second one will be very quick. Yeah,
it's often the way, because you dig in, and once that equaliser goes in, it's such a body blow, you can't recover.
Yeah. Oh, it's been brilliant to talk to you, thank you.
Pleasure.
I suddenly learnt so much about... I still don't know the offside rule, but I'm getting there.
That's a whole nother show.
It's a whole nother show. Kevin Hatchell, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you've been really, really busy with this tournament. talkSPORT commentator there, so thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Right, a quick break and I'll be back in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And just a reminder that John Boothman, who must be quite a happy Scotsman, England's out, will be joining us at the top of the hour to go through the papers for tomorrow. So he'll be in at the top of the hour. But first, today, the UK's Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee launched a major new inquiry into Russia, labelling the nation as the most acute threat to British national security. The committee is examining Russia's domestic instability and international alliances to help the UK formulate a robust long-term deterrence strategy. Well, the parliamentary action coincides with severe joint UK-EU cyber sanctions deployed this week against Russian intelligence proxies who have aggressively escalated their hybrid warfare by orchestrating destructive cyber attacks and election interferences across Europe. The British people now are being told that we must be more prepared. They want us to be prepared without being scared. So how big a threat is Russia and what kind of threat? Because we think about warfare as being tanks and bombs across the ocean, don't we? But that's not the way it is anymore, and it certainly wouldn't be the way any war with Russia would start these days. Well, joining me to discuss this, I'm thrilled to say, is Keir Giles, who's a senior fellow at Chatham House and an author of the wonderful book, Who Will Defend Europe? Keir, good to see you again. Thank you so much for joining me. This is an interesting one, isn't it, for the UK government, because they've got to get us used to the idea that something might go wrong without sending us all screaming and digging our own bunkers in the vegetable patch.
Well, yes, and the interesting thing about this new inquiry that's been announced by the Foreign Affairs Committee in Parliament is it isn't talking about whether Russia is a threat. It's using the fact that Russia is a threat as a baseline. And the inquiry is actually about what do we do about Russia in the long term. It's not even talking about how to resolve the war in Ukraine or the fact that Russia might attack us in the future. The examples that they give of Russian attacks are things that are actually happening now. It's not a hypothetical. So what the Foreign Affairs Committee is trying to do is work out a longer-term strategy for dealing with Russia. Not wondering whether it's a problem, but actually how to deal with the fact that Russia is a problem.
So, like I said, a lot of people would assume or imagine that warfare is exactly what we've seen in Ukraine, right? The baddies on one side, goodies on the other, and throwing bombs at each other. But that is potentially not the kind of war we might be looking at with Russia, at least initially.
Well, certainly not where we are, because in some respects we're at the far end of Europe from Russian tanks. We're certainly not at the far end of Europe from Russian missiles and drones and cyber attacks, because those can reach out across effectively any distance within Europe. But the examples that Emily Thornberry, the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, gives in her introduction to this inquiry are the things that we see already happening. They are the cyber attacks, they are the droning of airfields, they're the interference in democratic processes, the way in which Russia reaches out and touches us now today. Now, for hypothetical scenarios of how Russia might actually want to coerce this country in the future using something that's more aggressive, well, we can look across Europe at the campaigns of arson and murder and sabotage that we've seen trying to influence countries and trying to target their vulnerable points and find out exactly where they can be pressured. And the example that people keep coming back to, of course, is think of the cyber attacks on individual healthcare facilities within this country that have shut down hospitals, for example, and then think what happens if that is not a pinpoint attack but a mass attack across the whole of the NHS at once. How do you respond to that, and what exactly does it mean in terms of whether the United Kingdom can actually cope with an attack from Russia?
How resilient do we have to be? I'm talking not as a government, but as people, because we're a couple of generations who've never seen war on these shores, right? We're quite removed from the idea of hardship. We're quite removed from the idea of blackouts or food shortages or rationing. It's not something that we've even had to think about for 80 odd years. Do we now really have to start thinking, well, look, we've been spoiled in the last 80 years, and actually we need to be better prepared and understand that this is coming to some degree or other?
Well, in theory, we're all supposed to have been thinking about this for some time. The government has put out its Prepare website with advice on what to do in a crisis if basic services start to fall down. And in theory, we all know about it and we've read it. Usually when I ask in a room full of people how many people are actually aware of this, no hands go up. And that's part of the problem, of course. This has not been explained clearly as a problem to the British public. The ways in which, not just Russia, but other hostile actors as well, could actually make basic services stop here if they wanted to, have not been clearly communicated to the people who would suffer most from them. And yes, there are some basic things that you can do to protect yourself in advance, to prepare for a crisis, but there's a big difference between the government's Prepare website and the things it's supposed to be modelled on, which is advice from places like Europe and Japan, Sweden, Finland, those countries that take preparedness seriously. They all contain the same basic advice about getting yourself ready for things breaking down. So your go bag, your 72 hours of supplies, your reserves of water, all of that, things that are very easy for people who live out in the countryside, a bit trickier if you're living in a city flat. Never mind that. The fact is that all of those other countries also explain what the government is going to be doing to support you if things do start to go wrong. And that's one thing that's completely absent from the British advice. It's a big difference between that total lack of civil defence that we have here that you just mentioned and the way in which some other countries that recognise they're facing probably the same kind of problem are actually getting ready for it.
This also coincides, doesn't it, with a huge, the largest of its kind, military exercise taking place in the UK next year to check out defensiveness. But it struck me, Keir, that might be more to do with controlling the British population if, say, the grid goes down or there are food shortages or things like that. Will they be looking at all of those things? So preparing for Russian missiles and preparing to be able to keep the peace in the UK should anything bad happen.
Well, as far as I know, none of the details of exactly how the scenario of this exercise is supposed to play out have yet been released. But it is talking about getting the whole of society involved in defence. And necessarily, of course, that's going to involve testing systems. If it's to be meaningful at all, it has to actually stress test those things that would have to continue to work for society to work, for the economy to work, for people to stay alive if this country were under attack. Now, it's going to be very interesting to see just how realistic those exercises are, and whether, of course, they actually relate to real-life situations that this country could be facing if an adversary like Russia did decide to coerce or to test or to challenge us.
How does the guy, because I was reading about this earlier, prepare for the worst or prepare, but they're also saying, but we don't want to scare you. Should they actually scare us? I mean, because a lot of people don't pay attention. There'll be a lot of people, who don't keep in touch with what's going on in the news, who don't care what's going on, and anything that happens will come as an enormous shock to their system. So is it a case actually that this threat is now so real that the government should scare us a little bit and just say, look, you actually really, we're not mucking around here, and make sure that everybody in every corner of the land is just a tiny bit scared?
Well, yes, the problem is they've left it for so long while avoiding the problem that may be possibly the only answer left. The government has been saying for years that it wants to start a national conversation on defence so that it can get people to understand what the problem is and how it's going to affect their lives and what they want to do about it. But in reality, while this national conversation about defence is in all of the government's strategic plans and documents, they've been desperately trying to avoid it because it is inconvenient and it doesn't fit with their ideas of how exactly you're supposed to be running a country as a Labour government. So it is going to come as a surprise. And the parallel, of course, here that we have is way back in late 2021, beginning of 2022. The British government was trying to explain to people that Russia was about to invade Ukraine. And nobody was listening. Nobody believed it. Even people like me, who are the ideal audience for that kind of communication, going to be very receptive to it and very understanding of what the government is trying to transmit. I didn't believe it because it made no sense, because it wasn't a meaningful conversation that actually touched on the reasons why people would have doubts about this. And we face a similar challenge now because there's such a huge gap between the reality and what most people think is actually going on. There's an enormous amount of work that's needed to bridge the gap and to explain to people just what it means for them and how it's going to change their lives.
Have they left it too late, in a sense, the government? Because we do need to start understanding that what happens if the grid is hacked, or if we could do without electricity, and could there be people on the streets? If there's a food shortage, what happens next? So the government has to step beyond just telling us to be ready. They like you said, they have to tell us what they are going to do if that should happen.
If they are, in fact, in a position to do anything, because the speed with which all of the systems for keeping people alive and keeping the country running in the event of an attack on this country were dismantled in the 1990s means that there's been nothing left for getting on for 30 years now. And reconstituting all of those, not just the systems, but the mindset, the stocks, the large numbers of very basic, boring things that you need to have in warehouses to keep things going, all of that takes time and it takes money, and neither of those have yet been allocated to doing it, as far as anybody can tell from outside the British government system. So if there is work being done to prepare on a government level, as well as telling people what they should be doing to look after themselves, that too needs to be made more clear to the population so they understand exactly where we stand.
Good to speak to you, Keir. Thank you very much indeed. Let's talk soon. Keir Giles there, Senior Fellow at Chatham House and author of Who Will Defend Europe. Quick break, back in a second.
Here at Talk, we're giving you the chance to win a massive £26,000.
The question is, what would you do with all that money?
I don't know. We've got a wedding.
I would buy a camper van.
Probably just like clothes, yeah.
Go on a big holiday.
Emigrate.
So if you fancy getting your hands on £26,000 tax-free, here's all the details you need to enter.
For your chance to win, visit talk.tv/win or text TALK to 83338 by 6 p.m. on the 20th of July 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or send your name and number by post to Comp 1 PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by midnight on the 23rd of July 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. Coming up at the top of the hour is John Boothman. He's joining us to go through the newspapers for tomorrow, for Thursday. And I can only imagine what's on the front pages, and it will be a bit depressing for us who are supporting England, but there you go. Yesterday, when we were doing the papers with Amy, there was this amazing news, the story about a new dementia drug, a groundbreaking new Alzheimer's drug, which is called trontinemab, could potentially stop the disease and prevent dementia before symptoms even appear. I mean, even just saying those words, it is absolutely spine-tingling development. Scientists believe that this development could be a true game changer, eventually leading to routine preventative treatments similar to statins today. Entering a landmark phase 3 trial, it will be tested on 1,600 high-risk individuals who've been identified by markers in their blood, but who still are healthy, still have had no memory issues at all. And they'll be checking them with this drug and seeing what happens with them. They have, I think, an 8 in 10 chance of developing full-blown Alzheimer's if they've got these markers in their blood. So they will be checking these 1,600 patients. And talking of blood tests, a new type of examination that could detect early signs of Alzheimer's is being rolled out in Scotland, with more than 50 practices taking part in the research. Well, I'm absolutely thrilled to say joining me now is Professor Sir John Hardy, who's Chair of Molecular Biology of Neurological Disease at the UCL Institute of Neurology and Group Leader at the UK Dementia Research Institute. Thank you so much for joining me, Professor. It's such a delight to talk to you. How big a game changer is this?
It is a game changer. We've had, for the last 2 years, we've had drugs which slow Alzheimer's disease, which have become available, but they had serious side effects. This drug has a basic similar mechanism, but it seems as if it achieves these goals without the serious side effects, and that's why it's a game changer. It should make the drug much easier to use, so it's great news. And
am I right in saying that it's only fairly recently that we discovered what was causing Alzheimer's, and that is a kind of plaque that gathers in the brain? Is that right?
That's right. We do know a lot now. It's taken a while, I have to say, but we do know a lot now about what causes the disease. And you're right, it's a protein called amyloid in the plaques. in Alzheimer's disease, which build up in the brain, and these new drugs basically suck that amyloid, that plaque, out of the brain. That's how they work.
I mean, that is extraordinary. But can you just explain a little bit to me about this plaque? Why some people get it and some people don't? You know, why there is so much dementia and Alzheimer's that we're seeing, and just what is the mechanism for it gathering in the brain?
Yeah, good question. Well, some people make too much of this protein, and then it overwhelms the possibility of degrading it. And some people are just not good at degrading it. So it's a mixture. Probably in most people, it's a mixture of people who make a little bit more than average and are a little bit less good at degrading it. That's probably what it is in most of us who develop the disease.
Because I think of
what these drugs do is they basically bind to this amyloid and help the brain pull it out, help the immune system pull it out of the brain.
So, I mean, I imagine a plaque as something, I would imagine, sort of interfering with brain waves, or, you know, gathering around a pipe and stopping that from working properly in the basic terms. Is that basically what this plaque is?
These plaques, they're about 1/10 of a millimetre across, and they're just like pinpricks through the brain. And you're right, what they do is they disrupt the end of the neurons, the nerve cells, and stop them connecting with each other properly. That's basically what they do, yes.
And how was this discovered, and when was this discovered? Because I believe you were part of that discovery.
Yes, I mean, the basic discovery of plaques was made in the 1980s by groups in Australia and the US. What we did is we showed in a family from Nottingham that these people, in this family, they had a mutation in the protein that made up the plaque, and that told us that that's where the disease started.
Right, and these blood tests that the phase 3 trial, they're going to be tested as being and discovered as high-risk individuals. What do those blood tests tell you? What is it you're looking for in that blood test?
What you see is that the level of a protein related to the plaques builds up in your blood. That's what the blood tests show. And you can see that it's really very similar to cholesterol. Doing a cholesterol test. If you've got high levels of cholesterol, you know you're at high risk of heart disease. If you've got high levels of this protein in your blood, you know that the plaque is building up, and that can have severe consequences. So it's really similar in principle to you taking cholesterol tests at the doctors. And I'm hoping, and that's what the Scottish study is doing, I'm hoping that it can be rolled out across the NHS in the same way that, those of us who reach 60 are tested for cholesterol when we go to the GP. That's the eventual aim.
So what are we talking about here in terms of time span? Are we at the foothills now of completely curing dementia and Alzheimer's in patients in the future, that nobody will have to suffer with this horrible disease?
I think, I don't want to be too optimistic in that sense. I think we definitely, already with the drugs that are available now, it is possible to slow the disease process. That's not the same as stopping it. I think with this new drug and giving the drug earlier, we're going to be better than that. And it's going to be, I think, very similar to statins in heart disease. But, taking statins doesn't completely prevent heart disease, but it has massively reduced the incidence. And that's where I think we're going to be with Alzheimer's disease.
I mean, it is such an extraordinary breakthrough, and will give people a lot of hope, especially if they've got Alzheimer's in their family, right? Because is this a genetic link? Is there a familial link with this?
There is a familial link. There's some families which the familial link is extremely strong, and if those families often, for example, get the disease in their 50s, and those families have a very strong genetic link. Those families already know who they are. But in the bulk of the population, if your father or mother has the disease, it means your chances of the disease are increased. But it's by no means a certainty in the majority of us.
And if both parents have had Alzheimer's?
Yes, that increases your risk. That increases your risk for sure. But it's not a certainty even in those individuals. If the parents get the disease at, let's say, 75 or 80, and your chances of getting the disease, let's say you're currently in your 60s, your chances are increased, but it's not a certainty.
And as far as the future, if it does the same job, let's say, as statins have done, we're looking at tremendous, not just saving of people's old age, but of money as well.
Yes, of course. I have to say, though, these drugs are going to be, I'm sure these drugs are not going to be cheap.
No.
So there is going to be the cost of the drugs and so on and so forth. But that's right. I think there's, of course, a reduction in the costs of care and so on. I think that is exactly true.
And what sort of timescale are we looking at for this phase 3 trial? How long will that go on for?
I asked the drug company involved that exact question yesterday, and I said 3 to 5 years. I said 3 to 5 years to them, and they sort of cautiously nodded. So I'm going to say 3 to 5 years, and I'm going to cautiously say that.
So we could be looking at real hope for people in terms of medical terms in quite a short amount of time.
That's right, but of course we have to do the clinical trials have to run through, as you indicated at the beginning, and they have to be assessed, and then we have to get the permission from the health safety agencies, and then NICE, who decide whether the drug is financially worth it. So there's both, scientific progress, the clinical trials to complete, and then there's the bureaucratic processes to decide whether it reaches the NHS.
And still there is hope, and it's amazing. And the work you've done on it, I know, has been extraordinary as well. Professor Sir John Hardy, thank you very much indeed, Chair of Molecular Biology of Neurological Disease at the UCL Institute of Neurology. Back in a sec.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good evening to you. And it's not really, though, is it? I do feel a bit down about the football, but I'll be talking to somebody in just a moment who's probably not feeling quite as down as I am. But let me tell you about what's coming up at midnight. And coming up at midnight, of course, it's your chance to talk back. And we will be talking about social media. And the reason we're talking about social media is because Twitter reaches the grand old age of 20 today. And I just want to know, I mean, I used to use Twitter, in the early days. I was quite happy to use Twitter. In fact, I had to set up an account because there was a fake Petrie Hosken account that was saying all sorts of dreadful things. So I had to set one up so that people knew that. Anyway, long story, boring. I tried to get them taken down, but they weren't. So I don't know what's going on now in the Wild West because I've opted out of it because I did think it was a force for good, and then it turned into a much darker place, particularly for a woman who's slightly in the public eye. It's not a very friendly place to be, despite all the lovely people that followed me and all the lovely people that would comment. There was always the more than few that would say the most awful and hideous things. And I think that when we ask the question, has social media been a force for good or evil, it really depends on the user, doesn't it? Because a lot of people would find that they suddenly had this power and anonymity to attack anybody that they wanted to, anybody they'd heard on the radio or seen on the television, or was their local MP. They could just attack anybody that they felt like, any actor, all the jealousies eked out. And I used to always imagine these people in their filthy grey underpants in their mother's basement, then they would suddenly be all powerful because they had this anonymity. So in that regard, social media has given really sick, horrible people this sense of power that they've never had in their lives because, like I said, they're in their dirty underpants in their mother's basement and never achieved anything in their lives. Otherwise, they wouldn't have time to be going online and just attacking people for no good reason. So I think in that regard, and also it's enabled groups like paedophiles to find each other. It's enabled, the dark web and drugs and all sorts of really bad things. So it's very difficult, I think, to answer, has it been a force for good or evil? Because in a sense, it's been a force for both. But I guess the question, therefore, is the world a better place for it or a worse place for it? And I think that crystallises the mind a little bit. I don't think that we would be much worse off without it, is my genuine belief, as long as we got the other technologies like free phone calls and stuff like that. But without all that nastiness that goes on in the Wild West of the deep, dark corridors of social media. So for me, I don't miss it. I don't engage with it, people could be saying the most awful things, and I have no idea what they're saying. So I sleep well at night, and I'm absolutely fine. And I stopped using it after one particularly vicious and nasty attack from hundreds of people for something I didn't even do, and it was just disgusting. It was absolutely disgusting. So I just thought, no, I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. So I don't know if the world would be a worse place without it. Let me know what you think. I mean, how much has it done for you? What have you been able to achieve using social media or online? Maybe if you've got a business, it's been brilliant for you because you've been able to reach out to lots of other people. Maybe you're somebody like me who's just found it a bit dirty, a bit kind of not for me. Let me know what you think about this. Where would we be in the world without this social media now? Would we be that much worse off if we didn't have it? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Calls charged at national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. Well, joining me now to discuss this and, of course, the papers for tomorrow is one reasonably happy Scotsman, I would say. John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. England's coming home without anything.
I feel quite sorry tonight insofar as, you know, there must be lots of upset families and kids all over the country in England who had hoped right up until 5 minutes, in fact, of normal time, that England were going through to the World Cup final. I mean, you know, not just kids, I suppose, you know, whole generations, anybody who's been around really, I suppose, since 1966. This is the third time that England have nearly made it, not quite getting there under Bobby Robson in, 1990, and then in 2018 under Gareth Southgate. And in that respect, you know, football can be such a kind of cruel game, and it's hard to take, I think, and will be. People will be feeling sore for a good few days, and it has all sorts of implications. You know, I mean, you know, to take it away into the realm of, you know, the work that I'm employed in, you know, actually this could have had a huge bearing on the first days of the new Prime Minister.
That's very true. That feel-good factor,
Yeah, and, you know, people say after 66 that, you know, it had an immense benefit to the then Prime Minister, Harold Wilson. But, you know, that whole, you know, feeling good thing is very, very important in politics. In fact, probably more important now than it kind of usually is. But, you know, I'll tell you what I don't hope happens, right? What I don't hope happens is that, and sometimes in sport this has a tendency to happen, is things descend into recrimination. Look, England have had a pretty good tournament at the end of the day. They got there, they nearly won, and they just didn't make it. And things have got a tendency, I think, in sport in particular. People will always look for somebody to blame. You know, the manager's tactics were wrong, you know, heads must roll and all that stuff. And I think it would be more than unfortunate that you know, if that happened. I mean, being honest, I actually think, or thought at least until last night, that by far and away the best team in the tournament, objectively, was actually France.
Yeah.
And
that was a real shock, wasn't it?
Look what happened to France last night. Look, when you get to this stage in any football tournament, frankly, anything can happen, because for every team it's their cup final. Sometimes it's about belief, sometimes it's about character, sometimes it's about, you know, people just wanting it more than the other side. And we saw a bit of a demonstration of that tonight.
I think so, yeah.
You know, 85 minutes, England were still ahead, and somehow or other this Argentina team dug deep, not for the first time in this tournament. They were down 2-0 against Egypt, was it last week?
Yeah.
And they won 3-2. And, you know, in that respect, well, you know, I think that's kind of a more plausible. Nobody can complain that the English players did not give their all tonight.
No, and it was it really was a shame, but it just seems that Argentina went onto the pitch knowing they were going to win and acting like the team that were going to win the whole way through.
It's interesting you should say that. I mean, I had the impression watching even the national anthems at the beginning of the game, it was clear there was more Argentinian support in the stadium. But, you know, it seemed to me anyway, maybe uncharacteristically, that England just looked nervous and didn't look as confident. And, you know, the Argentinian guys just seemed to have a bit of passion and a bit of fire in their belly singing the anthem. And kind of, it's just, you know, down as they were with a few minutes to go, they just dug deeper. And somehow or other, just England couldn't hold it together. No,
well, they kept England up that end of the pitch pretty much for the second half, didn't they? I mean, England couldn't get back down the pitch to even attempt to score a goal, because the Argentinians kept them at their goal end.
Sure, and well, I suppose the next stage of the game is, you know, will Spain beat Argentina on Sunday? That'll be an interesting game to watch.
It will be
interesting. It's a cup final and anybody could win. Yeah.
I mean, we've seen such shocks, haven't we? Like France, who were the favourite to win, going out to Spain, and we saw Germany go out early. You know, there's been some real kind of like, oh, all right, this is that kind of tournament then. So it is anybody's game on Sunday.
Yeah, look, the other thing it's worth saying, right, I mean, and I do believe this, is that it's been a remarkable tournament. I mean, there's been all sorts of issues. One of the issues on Sunday that kind of got me slightly angry about today is that I didn't realise until today that half-time on Sunday is going to be 30 minutes so that they can have Shakira and a whole series
and
of
some sponsorship advertising
and lots
money.
of advertising. You know, there's been things like that have been kind of pretty annoying. But look, you know, 48 teams, you know, travelling to the States. It's been remarkably peaceful. It's been pretty joyous. You know, you know, for my part, I'm really proud, and I've said this to you before, that, you know, the Scottish fans played a part, I think, in creating the kind of mood round about that at the beginning. Not so much the team, but you know, it's a remarkable achievement and a remarkable feat that, you know, you can have all these nations playing in a World Cup tournament like this and there being no trouble, because, you know, football is a game that certainly hasn't been short of trouble either domestically or internationally in the past.
Well, the next one might have, 60-plus teams in it.
Yeah. And they're still arguing about whether the final will be in Spain or Morocco.
Yeah. Well, I suppose if Spain wins, there's a good chance it'll be in Spain. So they would get the dibs on it, I would have thought, if they won the World Cup. Yeah, it was really sad, actually, that game, because, like you said, we were all going like they're 1-0 up, and this could be us in the final, but it just didn't happen. And the goals that the Argentinians scored were blinders. They were so good, and England didn't stand a chance really against them. They were really, really good. Let's take a quick break, John, and we'll come back and have a look at the papers in a moment.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you. And with me is the wonderful John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland, to go through the papers. And we're waiting for some of them to come through, John, because I guess a lot of them were waiting themselves to get the score on the front page. But we should have the full range shortly. But the I paper shows, it says last roar, England fall just short. Argentina will play Spain Sunday at 8 o'clock on the BBC and on ITV. But the story they've gone with is care workers to get NHS-style annual pay rises. I wasn't aware they didn't.
Well, look, the care sector, is an interesting sector. The care sector is made up of lots of independent providers. They might be, large corporations, or alternatively, some of them are family-run businesses. So, they don't get the same pay as NHS workers. They've got different pay rates and pay grades for care workers. That's one of the reasons that people argue that there is a crisis of staffing in the service, because people can go and work in the health service for higher wages than working in the care service. I think this is a really quite interesting story, saying that there's going to be annual rises in order to bring care workers up to the same sort of levels of pay and probably conditions that they have in the health service. It also goes on to say, interestingly enough, that they want to create a national care service. Now, that's easier said than done. In Scotland, we've spent the last 4 or 5 years trying to look at that whole question of creating a national care service, something akin to, a service being under control of the government, a bit like the National Health Service. And it's kind of come to nothing. It's very, very difficult to do that. There's all sorts of questions about, almost like a postcode lottery for care. Whatever happens, if you were going to try and create a national care service, it would cost an awful lot of money to do that. But look, it's an aspiration that's clearly been talked about in government circles, and this is the way, by bringing the wages of care workers up to those in the NHS, of actually trying to achieve that.
Yeah, I mean, the whole system is a disaster at the moment. I mean, with some of my friends who have had to get carers for their parents, they're paying, I don't know, £30 an hour for a carer, and that carer is getting 11 quid. And the company that's running them is making the bulk of the money. And also, they're only allowed to be there for 15 minutes on the clock, or half an hour on the clock, and they're not being paid in between patients, so they're having to drive their own vehicles or get from A to B to C to D, and those journeys they're not even being paid for. The working conditions for those carers are absolutely appalling, and it's no wonder, frankly, that there is a problem with low-grade workers in that sector, because who else would want to do it?
Well, it's another, issue that's talked about quite a lot, certainly in anything I've seen about immigration, that a lot of these jobs in the care service have been taken up in, recent decades by people who have come here from other countries who are doing these jobs that, well, perhaps other people who are here might not particularly fancy.
Well, of course they don't.
And given, the drive to stop immigration, it means an even greater crisis in the sector.
Yeah, there's definitely something has got to be done about the paying conditions of those people who, on the whole, try to do as good a job as they can, given the constraints that they've got put upon them. I know my brother has early onset dementia. He's only in his 50s, and he has to have a carer go round. I think he has 2 at different times during the week, and he'd be absolutely lost without his carer, who's a young bloke who, you know, they get on really well. He takes them out shopping. They do a thankless job, really, for very little money, and they are appreciated. I can tell you that.
It's, you know, we're talking about it through the lens of the carers in this situation. Actually, you know, for the people who are in receipt of those services, who desperately need them,
absolutely,
you know, to find more and more, for example, that, you know, as you said yourself, that, you know, the care worker who's coming, you know, can only come for 15 minutes twice a day, when previously they would have spent maybe come 4 times a day and spent an hour on each occasion. And, for example, were able to provide at least cooked meals and the like. These things are getting squeezed more and more. By in reality, you know, government cuts. Certainly in Scotland, that's actually happening.
But also profit makers as well, and it is not like nursing. That shouldn't be a profit making scheme, right? It really shouldn't be a case of the people who are running these teams of care workers in the private sector being able to make millions and millions and millions of profit a year off the back of these people, and stealing as well from the patients. It's
difficult.
Yeah, it's really wrong. The Guardian has got a fascinating front page here, John. Farage told backers, "I need £1 million a year to stand as an MP." Now, he told senior figures in Reform that he would need £1 million a year to cover lost earnings. That's not really what being a politician is about, is it? To set your fee and say, I'm losing that, so you've got to compensate me for it.
I'm fascinated by this. I had to read the headline in the paper, in The Guardian, right, more than once this evening. I think the paper, The Guardian in particular, has done a pretty good job, right, in being at the forefront of any of the coverage of Farage and his interesting dealings about money. It does raise the question, and about the second paragraph, I think there, it says that this raises further questions about the £5 million gift that he got from the crypto billionaire Christopher Harborne. And I do think this is something, you know, we know it's going to run anyway. We've got the great bin-face election, by-election coming up, but that will not stop any inquiry, standards inquiry into Nigel Farage, and then there might have to be another by-election, depending, of course, in what that standards inquiry finds. But stories about money and Nigel Farage, I think it's fair to say we're going to hear a lot more of them.
Yeah, because the interesting thing about this, and why this would be significant if it formed part of the inquiry, is that Nigel Farage claimed that he didn't have to report it, he didn't have to register it, because it was a gift. Now, if it turns out this was 5 years' salary for Nigel Farage, then he absolutely should have registered it, and that's what makes it interesting, because I keep hearing Keir, Yusuf and all the others conflating the issue here and saying, look, we need this money for security, we need this money for this, and we're going, that's not the problem. The problem isn't that you were given the money. The problem is that you didn't tell us you were given the money. It wasn't on the register of interest, and that they keep trying to convince people that is not the issue, but that is the only issue.
Look, I think it's one of the issues. I think the other issue that you've raised there is interesting to me, which is I'm now hearing different explanations what this money was for. And again, to be fair to The Guardian, they've done a bit of a job in this.
Yeah, they have. But it's this is going to be interesting, and will undoubtedly form part of the investigations that are going on, or will be going on, as soon as Farage is an MP again. The Daily Star, caned by Messi. It says here, here we go, England. I love this line. England snatched defeat from the jaws of victory.
Look, we've talked a lot in the previous weeks, everybody who's been following the World Cup, about, who are the best players. Bellingham's been up there, Mbappe's been up there, Ronaldo's star has faded a bit, and so on. And here we are in the final, Lionel Messi, who I think, I read a statistic today, has walked around the park for 69% of the time and only intervenes because he's 39 years old.
Yeah.
When he sees the opportunity. The two goals tonight that were scored by Argentina were 2 assists by Messi. He spotted the opportunity, he took his chance, and Argentina are in the final.
Yeah. Did you watch PMQs?
I did, yes, I did, yeah.
What did you make of it? I'm just intrigued, really, as to what you thought about it. There's a story on the front here saying PM saying vote bin face, but he didn't actually say vote bin face, but he used a very clever line. What did you make of the way that he went out?
I was pretty surprised at how sympathetic people were. I actually, being a veteran of watching a number of prime ministers on their last occasions in the House of Commons, I thought it was actually very dignified and pretty respectful towards them, and emotional. And it's funny, all of the things that Starmer wasn't able to do when he was Prime Minister make any kind of emotional connection or whatever with the electorate. Somehow or other today, he kind of came across listening to what other people had to say, in particular, to be fair, Kemi Badenoch, right, had to say about him. He kind of came across as a really decent human being.
He did, and he was laughing.
I was very surprised. Yeah, I thought, the tone of our contribution today was actually really, really interesting. You usually expect, something a bit, I think even on occasions like this, a bit rougher and whatever, but it was kind of, there was something that was better about it. And I don't know, maybe people were just relieved to see the back of him or something, but I just there was something quite edifying about it today.
Yeah, I thought so too. And certainly Kemi was kinder to Keir than Keir was to Boris Johnson on his last day. So, and she made a point of saying that as well. So, yeah, I mean, maybe there was some sympathy as to how this happened. I mean, this has just been the strangest time, hasn't it? But I think he said, throw your vote in the bin or something.
Yes, he did. He said exactly that, rather than said that he was supporting. In fact, was there a Reform MP stood up and challenged him during PMQs to say that he had said vote for bin face.
He didn't say that.
And Starmer had to correct him.
Yeah, he said throw your vote in the bin, which was a clever way of saying vote for bin face. But there you go. Let's take a quick break.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. It is Talk and it is Petrie, and with me, John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. John, let's have a look at the Telegraph. Of course, half of the page they're given to England's World Cup dream being over, but the other stories are quite interesting. It says, Burnham says, I'm ready to ask for a little bit more from taxpayers, says Burnham. Now, does he mean breaking manifesto promises or not? Because we've got nobody who can scrutinise him for 6 weeks.
I don't think, at least I think this is the conventional wisdom, that he's talking about breaking any manifesto promises. There is, in a number of the other papers, a suggestion that he's looking at things like some kind of wealth tax. They're looking at doing things like replacing stamp duty and stuff like that. But, you know, as we've all said before, we have a new Prime Minister, but we still face the same old problems. And one of the big problems that the country faces is obviously the state of the economy and the fact that, you know, the levels of growth that have been achieved since Starmer, well, and even before Starmer, are nothing like good enough to be able to continue to fund all of the services that we have.
No, and it seems like he's more, well, like I said, we don't know because we can't question him, but it seems like he's going to go down the more tax and not cuts route, from what we can gather.
Well, look, if he's going to, you know, create extra money for infrastructure, if he's going to do some of the things in terms of public control that he talks about, things like water and things like buses and other such areas of policy, these things don't come cheap. You know, so I'm interested in that. You know, the rest of the paper and other papers are obviously also talking about you know, who he's going to appoint as Chancellor. He's got to strike a balance round about all these things. He also, remember, has got, you know, a whole bunch of soft left, or for want of a better description, backbenchers breathing down his neck. And you have to remember, these were the people who removed his predecessor.
Exactly.
So he has got a whole series of different audiences that he's got to satisfy. So, you know, that question on tax, a little bit more. I think we need to wait and see what he means by that. And that'll all depend on who he appoints as Chancellor and what comes in the budget in the autumn.
Yeah, it says Mr Burnham is to reconsider more than 12 billion of tax rises made by Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, amid growing fears for jobs and for growth. But, you know, I mean, it has to be said that Labour governments seem to be addicted to tax.
Yeah, look, there's different ways of achieving economic growth. If, you know, you can guarantee that any extra taxes that are going to be raised are going to go into infrastructure projects and capital projects that can increase employment, can do things about the housing crisis, can, you know, better deliver any kind of services that we've got, then fine, right? But, you know, it's certainly been the case in the past that these things don't always happen. They get swallowed up by wage increases, for example.
Yeah.
You
certainly
know,
with the
enough,
NHS, yeah.
Not enough money gets spent on the sort of projects that we are talking about. So, you know, if you can guarantee that these things go in that direction, then fine. Look, I mean, all of this is very interesting, and we'll still need to wait to see what happens. What is worth saying, though, is that certainly Labour MPs are a lot happier now that Burnham is coming than having Starmer as a ball and chain round their neck. And the least they think can happen is that he won't make the mistakes that Starmer made.
No, he'll just make other mistakes. I mean, this is a man who's used to being liked, and as Tony Blair warned him yesterday, you will not be loved. And he's got a lot of balancing to do, like you said, between what the country wants, what his backbenchers want. They're already asking him to water down or soften Shabana Mahmood's immigration policies. That won't go down very well with the public. There's also a suggestion from his backbenchers that council should be able to put the council tax up by as much as they want, which the unintended consequences are, of course, that a Labour council will be voted out next time. So, you know, he's got a lot of people he's got to listen to, and I don't think he's used to being unpopular.
Well, look, you know, politics is about making choices, and these choices are difficult. And you know, that's the game that politicians are in. But as I said, I don't think. I mean, look, Starmer made, and we've talked about this too often before, so many basic mistakes, particularly at the very beginning.
Right at the beginning.
Looking at, you know, across the broad sweep of the papers tonight, the one thing that I find quite interesting is that it's clear that, you know, lots of promises have been made to lots of people about jobs, and some people are going to be unhappy by the time we get to next Tuesday or Wednesday when they find that they don't have these jobs. And the other thing that any new Prime Minister needs to be careful of is that you need to keep some people in their jobs. You know, from the Prime Minister's point of view, to come in and change all of the main jobs as the, you know, leading officers of
just
state,
chaos, yeah.
and, you know, rip up all the existing posts that the Cabinet have got. You know, new ministers take a long time, you know, a year or whatever, to get their feet under the table, to understand their departments, never mind drive any change in them. And looking at what appears to be the case, though, you know, we could be wrong, still 5 days to go, lots more speculation, I'm sure. He seems to be, well, really promoting a wholesale change of personnel around a lot of the big jobs in the Cabinet and some others. And I'm not sure that's the right direction to go in.
No, but you know, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. That's the issue. The other story on the front page here is police arrest a man over a threat to shoot Farage in the head. Police arrested this man for threatening to kill Nigel Farage. The suspect, who's been described himself as a terrorist on social media, warned Mr. Farage, "I am going to shoot you in the head if you win." Now, some people will say, well, that's free speech, but that is not. Free speech doesn't mean free of consequence, and that also is an act of violence. So that is not free speech. That is not under the banner of free speech. But Farage has been saying that he gets a lot of death threats. I wonder why this one particularly caught the eye of the police.
Well, I think because it's such a brazen and open threat, I suppose. Look, I mean, you started off the programme, and your theme tonight for people phoning up later is all about social media. You know, one of the things that's prevalent in social media is exactly this kind of threat.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't know that I don't know a politician who hasn't had a threat of violence, or certainly lots and lots of abuse in social media.
Yeah.
And we're not just talking about, you know, okay, Nigel Farage probably gets, you know, a bigger share of threats than most senior politicians. He's regarded as a divisive character, and that's not to obviously defend any of these kind of threats. But most politicians are in receipt of threats all the time. That's why we're talking
particularly the women.
Yeah, and that's why we're talking about, in the wake of the tragic circumstances surrounding Anne Widdecombe, increased security for politicians. But look, it's not just MPs, it's now, you know, this is a much wider net of people, and I'm not just talking about, you know, MSPs in Scotland, I'm talking about local councillors.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's not any wonder, to me anyway, that people no longer find going into politics to be in any shape or form an attractive business, because with it comes all of this horrible and horrendous baggage.
Yeah.
And you know, more often than not, completely unsolicited, of course. And you know, social media and that mixture with politics is a pretty dangerous place. And I don't know, at the end of the day, how the authorities are going to be able to...
They're just not. You know, Keir Yusuf was talking this morning, wasn't he, saying that if Reform wins, he doesn't care about the cost. There will be round-the-clock protection for all MPs, including former MPs who are still in the public eye. Well, you're talking thousands of people. Around-the-clock protection costs millions of pounds. He estimated 100 million. That is a drop in the bucket as to what it would cost, even if we had the manpower to provide around-the-clock protection for MPs and their families. And he said it doesn't matter what it costs. Well, I think you'll find that 100 million is nothing.
Well, you know, I actually, I suppose this is sad to say in a funny kind of way, right? But you know, it's not something. If the public thought that every politician was to have a car and security people 24 hours a day, actually the other thing that it does as a consequence is it cuts down public access to politicians, and that everywhere politicians went, that they were going to have to be accompanied by this. I think it would put a lot of people off being involved in politics, but the cost of all this stuff is absolutely horrendous, as you say. And look, I would be the first person to express sympathy for politicians in any of these kind of circumstances, but I really don't know how you solve it. And it's very easy to come on the radio and the television and say, yeah, well, every politician will have this, that, and the other. It's much more difficult than that. What about all the politicians who live in rural areas, who
You're talking around the clock protection.
Yeah,
I mean, he's not talking about having a buzzer to the police. And he also said today, he said, oh, well, everybody's got that. They can just dial 999. No, these buzzers circumvent all of that. You get, because I used to have one. And if you press it, they're at your door. I mean, there's no messing around. I had some problems with the IRA at one point. And they are at your door. So it's not quite the same as just dialing 999. No, so I'm guessing that he perhaps hasn't looked into what it would.
Yeah. Look, that's not to say that these things could be improved and have to be improved, but
yeah,
you know,
of course,
the suggestion that all politicians and all former politicians, and as I say, right down to, you know, we've got devolved legislatures, we've got local authorities, you know, and again, you know, even local councillors these days. I just think many people who run for any of these offices now is now simply looking over their shoulders and saying, there's other things that I can do.
Yeah. I mean, it must be scary, but... and finally, just before we go to the next break, there's another story on the front of the Telegraph, which is quite... So this is a nib at the bottom. The MP accused of groping two women at the London's Groucho Club, allegedly fist-bumped in celebration. Afterwards, a court heard that Patrick Spencer, 38, a former Tory MP, has pleaded not guilty, and when questioned, he said that he's huggy and gregarious. Yeah, as I think there's probably a lot of men who think that it's perfectly okay to behave like that.
I think on this occasion, from anything I've heard, he may have been more than huggy and gregarious.
Yes.
But that will be up to the court to decide.
Absolutely, it will be. So let's take a quick break, and John and I'll be back in just a moment.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a good evening. It's Petrie here with you on Talk, and with me the wonderful John Boothman, political correspondent at the Sunday Times in Scotland. Well, the FT seems to think it's got the story here that says that Shabana Mahmood is nailed down as the new Chancellor, and the city has responded well.
I think this is about the sixth name I've heard. I mean,
Yeah.
It was going to be West Street, and it was going to be Pat McFadden, it was going to be Yvette Cooper, it was going to be Ed Miliband. I'm sure I must have missed somebody, but now it's Shabana Mahmood, right? And I think what's really interesting about that is that I think by and large, you know, partly because he didn't want to be challenged, partly because he didn't want to offend anybody, that Andy Burnham and his aides have kept very quiet about any of the choices. Now, they're saying it's nailed down. There's still 5 days to go until he really becomes Prime Minister. But you know, the reassuring thing, if this is correct from Burnham's point of view in terms of striking all those balances that we talked about, is that this news on the front page of the Financial Times and other papers, including the Times, seems to have reassured the markets a bit.
Yeah.
That she's on the right of the party, that she's not going to do anything precipitous that's going to cause problems economically for the government. You know, it's tempered a bit, of course, by that news that we spoke about earlier about the possibility of some kind of tax rises somewhere. But, you know, I think he'll be quite heartened if indeed this is correct by this news. It also contains a series of other bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Suggesting that Ed Miliband could be made the Foreign Secretary. Now, last week it was supposed to be his brother that was to be the Foreign Secretary. And that begs the question, what happens to Yvette Cooper then in this case? But in this case, lots of promises have been made to lots of people. There's other people mentioned in this article as getting jobs. Louise Hay, one of his Manchester colleagues, Jonathan Reynolds, maybe coming back at business in energy, and a few other people besides. But, you know, I'm glad this is all coming to an end.
Yeah, me too.
So much speculation about it.
Yeah, I mean, they are convinced it is her, that is definitely happening, they're saying. But we, like you said, we'll find out, I guess, on Monday. I suspect we won't get the full cabinet on Monday, but we'll certainly start to get some sort of breakthrough names coming through, I would imagine. The Metro, teen hackers posed a £56 billion threat to the UK. 2 teenage hackers who unleashed travel chaos for millions that could have caused 56 billion lost to the economy, a court has heard. This is extraordinary, isn't it? The kind of damage that these people can do with a click of a switch.
Look, I thought this is an astonishing story. Woolwich Crown Court, I think it's from. 2 men who are part of a cyber hacking gang who made millions from blackmail. Their case in the court. It said that, what does it say? They hacked into Transport for London servers.
Yeah.
And they could have unleashed travel chaos for millions of people. They posed that threat to the economy, 56 billion quid. They managed to stop all contactless and Oyster payments and prevented all live tube information on TfL apps and its website. I mean, teen hackers, unbelievable. It's like a story from a bad movie.
It really is, yeah. And I think they're definitely gonna get the old-fashioned book thrown at them, not a MacBook. That brings me actually to one of your stories. Let me just say that the Sun as well, reflecting the football, and the Daily Mail doing the same. The Times reflecting the football and the Burnham wealth tax in play, and the Mirror also reflecting the football. So all of those front pages really looking at the loss of England to Argentina. But one thing I did want to talk to you about, because I was talking about this earlier on in the programme, is this national campaign to get the country ready for conflict, suggesting that we need to stockpile food, water and medicine to prepare for war and other things like hackers, I guess, from Russia.
It is an astonishing story. It said the Times earlier today, Darren Jones, who's the chief advisor to the chief minister to the prime minister, saying that the government's already carrying out exercises round about this, worried about Russian cyber attacks and the like. But it just shows the dependence that we all actually have on this stuff. That actually we are so dependent on the internet. We are so dependent on this kind of technology that potentially in any attack could be taken out, and sort of it does seem a bit alien to us that this idea that we've to stockpile bottles of water and aspirins and non-perishable food.
Get a wind-up radio.
Wind-up radios, power banks. You see these advertised.
Yeah, solar power banks, and also cash. I mean, who has cash?
Well, who takes cash, right?
Yeah, well, they'd have to if the payment system went down, presumably. So it's worth having 50 quid stashed somewhere as well, just in case. It's a really interesting thing, but they're sort of saying it gently, which I'm not sure is the right way to say it. I think they need to scare us a little bit into getting prepared.
Well, if they say it gently, it might not ever happen. That is the stockpiling, but the attacks might happen.
Yeah.
We've just seen the previous story, which is itself interesting. You hear stories every couple of days about, public sector and private sector organisations being hacked. People's data being hacked. People's, information on their bank accounts and the like. But, we're not really very far away from any of this kind of stuff. And as you say, maybe the government should be a bit louder about it rather than, this kind of softly approach. But it's difficult to see. We've spoken about this in general about the likes of defence. The government keeps saying that it's spending more and more money in defence and more money perhaps in these type of preparations, but somehow or other we don't see any of that.
No.
And until this stuff, as you say, is louder and perhaps more visible, then maybe, until then we won't pay the attention that we should.
I did a voiceover on a documentary, docudrama documentary called Blackout of 20 odd years ago, I can't remember, which just talked about the grid going down, and it showed in sort of, it looked very real. As to what would happen to the country in this, it was almost like a post-apocalyptic thing. What would happen if just the grid went down? And it was absolutely terrifying. I mean, I always think of things like that. And we're talking about that times 100 if Russia do manage to hack things. So that always makes me kind of, I just have this visceral image of what we all turn into in that situation.
Petrie, perhaps we've even thought maybe too quickly about the lessons from COVID.
Yeah. I just seriously, we've got to take more responsibility for ourselves and prepare a little bit without panicking. I want to talk to you about traffic cones, John. This is a sweet story.
We started off talking about the World Cup and how sad it was tonight, but also, as I say, I mentioned Scotland. What happened today, and this is a story in the Boston Globe, is that a special traffic cone arrived in Boston today from Glasgow. It had various images on the side of the Boston Red Sox, of a rolling square slice sausage, which is a delicacy you can get in Scotland, all to commemorate the Tartan Army in Boston, and actually what is now going to be, a relationship between Glasgow and Boston in particular, which I think actually in practical terms will be of great benefit, in fact, to Glasgow and to Scotland. The one thing that certainly jumped out to me and all the things that happened that most people who are watching this would have seen in social media is, people in Boston and in Massachusetts and Rhode Island said they all want to come in Scotland on holiday, and I hope that happens.
Yeah.
But look, it'll be of real economic benefit, right, as well as all the other benefits that the Scots brought to Boston, including drinking the city dry, and it would just be really, really important in terms of fostering good relations between the two countries.
Well, this traffic cone travelled first class on a flight, and I'm guessing it's got to end up on the head of some statue.
Sure.
It has to, in Boston, in order for it to fulfil its proper destiny. But John, it's a lovely story. I love it. Thank you very much indeed for joining me on this occasion. John Boozman there, political correspondent for the Sunday Times in Scotland. Coming up, it is you and me, and we have a couple of interviews as well, because I had a feeling it would be a little bit quieter. So I'll be back with you just the other side of the news.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a good morning to you. This is Talk and it is Petrie here. And what I want to talk to you about this morning is social media. And that's because Twitter is 20 years old now. It just reached its 20th birthday yesterday. I want to know if it's all started off so well, didn't it? Twitter and things like that. There was always some nasty people hiding, keyboard warriors hiding behind their anonymity to say nasty things to people they've never even met. But it was okay, right? And then it just, I think it's since Elon Musk bought it, I have to become completely honest with you, I think it's become an absolute cesspit. And I'm struggling to see really the value in it. So I just wonder from you, as far as social media goes, has it been a force of good or a force of evil? I mean, is it, I suppose, I mean, both things can be true at the same time, right? It is possible for that to be the case. So I suppose the more pertinent question is the world a better place for social media? I mean, have you benefited from it? Have you? Do you enjoy it? Do you take part in it? Do you like the connection that you can have with, you can contact anybody, any famous person that you've always liked, or you want to comment on a film or whatever. Everybody is accessible now. People can get hold of you so easily, which I think is another part of it I don't particularly like, although that job I was telling you about, that documentary that I did, which I absolutely loved. I'd love to do more of that stuff, actually. They contacted me through Twitter all those years ago. So it can't have been more than 20 years ago then. So it must be, okay. But yeah, so so that worked to my benefit. But I don't know. I'm not sure the world is a better place for social media. Let me know if you think it is. I mean, for some people with their businesses, it's absolutely vital. And some people, social media itself is their business, and they make a lot of money out of having a lot of followers. And people on TikTok, for example, they get paid because there's advertising around them. So there's lots and lots of people who have benefited from it. But I just wonder if the world would be so much worse if it wasn't around right now. And I just don't believe it would be. I think we could have managed quite well without it. And maybe that's just because of my particular experiences with social media. I don't enjoy it. I don't. I find the sudden accessibility to complete strangers I find a bit troubling. I'm a very private person, and have only ever posted pictures of my dog. I never comment on anything, ever do anything, and it was a kind of a holding pattern because I had to set up the page because I had a fake Hosken page, a Petrie Hosken page, and that person was saying the most outrageous things that I would never say. So I had to set one up and say to people, this is the real one. But I've not really used it. I've not really pushed opinion or anything on social media. But of course I have opinion on my radio shows, or when I've done things like Sky or ITV or any of the other jobs that I've had over the years. And I've been paid to have opinions, and so I've had opinions on those programmes. And it's them that have sought some really nasty some really nasty comments, and some very beautiful comments as well. But I just couldn't bear it. I just thought, what kind of person wants to do that? I just don't get it. I don't understand it. So if you can convince me that social media has been a brilliant thing, then absolutely fantastic. I'd love to hear from you. But do you think that it's been? Would the world be a worse place without it? I don't know. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Those calls are charged at the national rate. And text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Well, now then, we've got to look at the World Cup, really, haven't we? I know that I'm banging on about it a bit, but it's because I got into it rather more than I thought I would, and rather late. And now we're out. Perhaps it's my fault. I don't know. Alex Three Lions Irons joins me now, to talk sport presenter and producer. Alex, what was it like sitting? Where were you watching it?
Do we have to talk about it? Can we not talk about something else?
No,
please?
we have to talk about it. I'm afraid. I know. I know you're still wearing your England shirt, so you haven't thrown that in a corner yet.
No. I only just got home, actually, so I rushed in I was watching it over in East London at Sports Interactive Headquarters, which is the home of the football game Football Manager. So I was invited by the lovely people at Pledge Ball, who are a grassroots initiative.
Oh, Alex? You've gone all quiet.
Oh, there we go.
There we
I've
go.
come back now.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there. Everything just went weird.
Yeah.
Essentially, Pledge Ball is a grassroots initiative to help essentially make people aware that global warming is affecting the game. So that's essentially they reach out to clubs and how they can change the way that clubs are run to kind of help with global warming. They invited me down to Sports Interactive to watch the game with them, and it was good fun on the most part, apart from the result.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? We were watching it in here. And of course, as you know, our newsrooms are very close together, Talk Sport and Talk. And so I didn't need to watch the game to know what was happening because of all the voices of the guys and girls in the Talk Sport section. But it looked like we were just going to squeeze through. And for the last 5-10 minutes, it just all went the wrong way.
Yeah, it felt as though Argentina were on the front foot, and Tuchel, for whatever reason, felt like it was a good idea to sit back and soak up as much pressure as possible, and it looked like it could have worked. Argentina hit the post. Pickford looked like he was going to be on fine form, and Argentina, we knew they were going to be.
Particularly what their attitude
was all over Bellingham. I think he should have got a yellow card within the first 3-4 minutes. It was always going to be that way, and England should have known that. And it felt as though they were up for a fight at one point, but 70 minutes in, 20 to go, it just looked like England were all out of gas, and they just were sitting back, just trying to just park the bus, Mourinho ball it, if you want to use a football term in that sense, and just try and hold on for a win when really they should have just get two and then shut down. Yeah, I mean, because Argentina just kept them. Our goalie was on his feet the whole time because they were kept. The England players were kept at that end of the pitch, whichever end it was. Argentina just completely pushed them near to the goal that they needed and kept them there. Yeah, exactly. As soon as Argentina smelt weakness in that England team, they were going to be all over it. And you can't have 6 defenders on at the same time. I think at one point they brought on O'Reilly and Byrne, and they still had the 4 that they started the game with.
Yeah.
Stones was injured. Jed Spence had run his heart out before that second goal, going into that tackle with Messi. You could tell that he got cramp.
Well, when it was 1-1, that I suppose you could argue that at least a strong defending team could have pushed us to penalty shootout. I mean, that would have given us. It
would have gone to extra time, and I don't even think then England would have held on during extra time. Yeah. I think, and the fact that we go 2-1 down, and then he brings on the attacking changes when he should have done that 10-15 minutes earlier. Bring on Tony, bring on Rashford, maybe even bring Kane off. And I know Kane's been a stalwart of the England team for this tournament and for years in the past. And he's probably got one more tournament left in him. But he looked on his feet, and as the rest of the team did throughout. But Kane was doing a lot of defensive work. He was collecting the ball in the corners. It's like, why is he one of the last men back? He should be up the other end of the field trying to urge the ball forward instead of winning it and trying to hoof it up to nobody where he should be. It's frustrating.
It was a frustrating game. And the first half, it was particularly frustrating because, of course, it was all grabbing ankles and.
It was more of a wrestling and.
It really was. I kept saying, "This isn't rugby, lads. Come on." Yeah. It was stupid, and it was stopped every couple of minutes, and the ref was involved, and it was just a very frustrating start to the game. But it did show that Argentina were battling from the second. I've said this earlier on. They went onto that pitch as winners already.
Yeah, and you could see even after the national anthems, they were pumped.
They had won that game as far as they were concerned from the second they started, and that's why they didn't give up. I don't know if you've seen this story, Alex. This is a question saying, has a time traveller predicted the World Cup winner?
Okay.
There's a viral X post from 2021. that gives a final score. Fans are freaking out after the mysterious post correctly predicted that Spain would be in Sunday's final. The time traveller also predicted that England would be beaten by Argentina in the semi-final face-off. It then predicts that the South American country will go on to win the whole tournament, and the viral post even specified the score. Argentina, this time traveller wrote, Argentina just beat Spain at the 2026 World Cup final 3-2, and that was written July the 12th, 2021.
I have seen that, and maybe they're very, very lucky. Maybe they've got a third eye or a crystal ball they've been looking
Hey,
over.
look, don't knock it.
I mean, has this person also got this weekend's lottery numbers?
Yeah, sadly, I've already nicked those, and I'm not sharing them. So, I might give you a couple of quid on Monday if I see you. But
that would be lovely. Thank you.
But it's just one of those things, isn't it? It's like you say. It's good guesswork, right? But if it is a 3-2, and I've seen a lot of people say it's going to be a high-scoring game on Sunday between Argentina and Spain, that there will be lots of goals.
I don't think it will be. Spain have been one of the defensive walls of this tournament. They've only let in, I think it's one goal during the whole competition, and that was in the quarterfinals. So I don't think it'll be a high-scoring game. I think Spain are a very good defensive unit, as we've seen throughout this competition. Argentina, we know, can break things down. We saw it tonight with England. They've done it with every other team, although them struggling against Cape Verde did give me hope, but maybe that was just a bit more wishful thinking on my behalf. But I think Spain will probably come up on top. I think Spain, they're European winners. I know Argentina won it 4 years ago, but I think that Spain have a stronger team overall against compared to Argentina.
Yeah, but Argentina's just got something. Spain. They've got that battle mentality.
The way that Spain dominated France.
Yeah, true.
You would have going into that game, you think, France will win this, no problem. Mbappe's going to score, Elise is going to score, Dembele's going to get a goal. And Spain shut them out. And Spain, I will do exactly the same thing against Argentina on Sunday. At least for, I hope, fingers crossed, that's what happens. One, because of England, and two, I've got Spanish relatives, so I'd want them.
You've got skin in the game.
Yeah,
and I think the whole of Europe will be backing Spain.
Yeah,
I think the English have got to, haven't we? We've got to go there. We can't back Argentina.
No,
not after what they did to us. It's not.
No,
absolutely not.
I know there are people north of the border and on the other side of the Irish Sea were supporting Argentina last night or tonight, and maybe you should look at yourselves in the mirror, maybe.
Yeah. Just don't be so childish. We're not childish at all, are we, Alex?
No, definitely not.
We're very, very grown up.
Definitely didn't say any swear words after the game.
No, absolutely not. Alex, it's lovely to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning. Alex, Three Lions Irons there in his Three Lions shirt, TalkSport presenter and producer. So here you are, taking your calls next.
Here at Talk, we're giving you the chance to win a massive £26,000.
The question is, what would you do with all that money?
I don't know. We've got a wedding.
I would buy a camper van.
Probably just like clothes, yeah.
Go on a big holiday.
Emigrate. So if you fancy getting your hands on £26,000 tax-free, here's all the details you need to enter.
For your chance to win, visit talk.tv/win or text TALK to 83338 by 6 p.m. on the 20th of July 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or send your name and number by post to Comp 1 PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP. To arrive by midnight on the 23rd of July 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. This is a network promotion, full T's and C's at talk.tv/win.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie, and this is your chance to talk back. And we're talking about social media because Twitter reached its 20th birthday, and I have a fairly negative approach to it. So I'm just really intrigued as to whether would the world be a much worse place if we hadn't got social media. And I'm really struggling to think that it would be a worse place. I can't think what it has given us, what positives there are to it. I mean, I suppose there are some that people can, find other Lego enthusiasts or whatever. But that also means that criminals can find each other as well, right? And I suppose both things can be true at the same time. It can be a force for good and a force for evil. But I just can't help but thinking that if it had never been invented, let's say it never happened, would we be any worse off? Would we be thinking this, we're missing something? I like a lot of the new technologies. I mean, the things that you can, like actually Joanna's saying here, social media, there's good and bad in everything. It's the people using it, not the technology. I can talk to friends across the world or leave messages without charge instead of expensive timed calls. There are always evil people using anything for personal gain. And I think that there is some really good technologies, and I'd still like some of them without the social media part. I don't know what Facebook gives you. I don't know what, I mean, at the beginning of Facebook, people were getting in touch with me who I'd been at school with, who I hadn't seen for years. And it's kind of like, why? We clearly, there was nothing that was holding us together. So you're reaching out to me now. I just found it very strange. Yeah, I've never really got it, I suppose. I've never really thought, why is this a thing? So I just wonder what you think, really. Would the world be so much worse off if we hadn't got the ability to follow somebody and say something? Or I don't know. I can't think that it would be that worse. Alison is in County Antrim. Hello, Alison. Good morning.
Good morning, Petrie. Hi.
Hi. How are you today? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Good, good. What do you think
Surviving with the sun.
Yeah.
The weather's been... Oh.
I know. It's going to be hot tomorrow as well, isn't it? Today,
yeah.
Later on today.
Yes, I believe, according to my husband, it's to go on for the next, 7 days or so, according to the forecast.
So even in County Antrim?
Yes, even in County Antrim.
Even in County Antrim?
Yes.
How are you coping with your pale skin and green or blue eyes? I mean, how do you manage?
Well, I actually have sort of bluey brown eyes.
Oh, right.
But still, I burn, I fry, and it's just... I was up in Portrush on Monday, and I literally came home and lay in bed.
Yeah.
Because I just felt roasted, and thank goodness it has settled. So that's something.
Yeah, I mean, this is because I'm Celt and pale and blue-eyed, and so the sun and I just do not get on, and I just find myself so tired. I was sort of old lady going to bed in the afternoon, having a sleep.
Yeah, I'm falling asleep.
Yeah,
the heat is. Yeah. Shockingly draining.
Yeah, it really is. But, the winter will be here soon enough and we'll be complaining about that. What do you think of social media, Alison?
I actually am a little bit divided on it, Petrie. Mm-hmm. Especially Twitter. For some reason, for me, now I know it's different with celebs. I'm sure because you're in a different sort of situation to the like of myself. But I feel that I've got a lot out of it.
Oh, have you?
Yeah. Well, in terms of, I remember when my kids were at school, I got following a lot of accounts, educational accounts, and maybe a subject that they were struggling with, or one that one that maybe I couldn't help them with particularly well with when it came to homework. You know, people were quite engaging with me. So I found that good. Also, I've met a few Europeans through it who I've got quite friendly with, you know, continental Europeans, as well as Americans and just like people from all over the world, Petrie.
Yeah.
You know, Scandinavia as well, and like just all over. I think I am a great believer in what you put out there, you get back. Especially not that would include things that aren't political, because obviously political stuff, you know, is a sensitivity really.
Well, but, yeah, I mean, it causes horrible violent reactions. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, and it's prone to bias and things like that and whatever else. That's just like, for one example I can think of. I'm not a fond of bots on Twitter.
Yeah, can you tell which is a bot and which isn't, though?
Yeah, well, I can now a little bit better with the help of my daughter. My daughter is so savvy about things like that on Twitter. Like, she's really, and she's, you know, really, you know, on top of it, things like that. And she could actually teach me quite a bit.
That's good, though.
But, yeah, you know, but you do get, I got for a little while, like, bots following me, and I just blocked them. As soon as I, you know, suss out the fact or work out the fact that they're bots, I just block them.
Yeah, no, what I used to do, because I didn't used to block people because then they knew they were blocked. And what they then did was just come up with another username and attack me using that, right?
That way.
So it was completely pointless. So what I used to do is just mute them. So they could scream and shout as much as they wanted, but it never turned up on my on my page. So I just used to quite enjoy going through, and sometimes, depending on what platform I'd been on, like if I'd been on ITV or BBC or Sky or something like that, depending on how many people were watching, it could be a couple of hundred people that I was having to go through and mute. And I hadn't even said, I mean, I'm not even that controversial a figure, and I'm certainly not a celebrity, right? It's just, I'm not controversial. I'm not, and I'm not horrible, and I don't tend to be divisive, but still you get attacked. And maybe I do have that sour relationship, Alison, because I wasn't able to use it in the way that you have been able to use it and benefit from it.
Yeah. You know, well, I have watched, or I must say I have watched, or do get a chance to watch almost every show of yours, Petrie, and there's nothing that I can say is untoward or, you know, offensive or whatever. It's all good, you know.
But people find offence, though, Alison. They will find offence that I am not a racist. You know, they will be offended by that, or they will be angry at something else that I might suggest, you know, being empathetic and a reasonably kind person. They don't like it, and so they'll attack me for it, and it's just boring.
Yeah, like sometimes people try and sort of work out a way to be offensive.
Yeah.
You know, cause offence too, you know.
But they want to be offended. You know, people want to be angry. They want to attack me. They want, or whoever it is they want to attack, and they feel they can just do it. There's no cooling off period where they think, well, why am I doing this? You know, I get called ugly, four eyes, you know, what I need is a good raping. You know, it's stuff like that. And you just think, why have you thought about what it is you're saying and why you're saying it? How do you benefit from that? That's what I don't understand, Alison. I don't get. What are they getting from that?
That's probably from unhinged people anyway.
Yeah.
You know, I hate to say it, but,
yeah,
you know, obvious kind of, you know, are people just out for attention?
Yes.
I find that's one thing I do find on it, there are a lot of people out there just to get attention. Me, I go on it just to look, keep up to date on news and so on, because if I'm out and about doing something and not near TV or anything, it is handy to go on to social media.
Yeah. And, I used to get something out of it. You know, I did used to get something out of it, and until I just it started to get to the point where it didn't matter if I had, 100 lovely comments. One horrible one would ruin my, would ruin the programme for me. I just think, oh, well, I thought I did a good show, and whatever it was, and I just thought I'm giving this too much power. I think that is the thing, and when I cease to give it power, it doesn't. It's like, oh, such a relief. But I can see that it would be brilliant to be able to reach out to people.
I can see the divisive side of it, and I would believe that there are certain personality types maybe shouldn't go on Twitter. I don't know, just people that, maybe take things really to heart, not yourself, but, there's certain personality types, that maybe would be best advised to kind of stay away from it.
Yeah, I wish there was a way of doing that. And maybe the way to do that is to absolutely ban anonymity. So that that everybody must be verified, so that they have to take responsibility. I don't want to stifle free speech. If somebody wants to tell me I'm a fat, ugly old cow, they're completely welcome to do so. But they should do it with their full chest, right? They should be brave enough to say that to me with their real name. So I'm not trying to stop them from saying it. I'm just saying, say it if you can bear the responsibility of it.
Yes, or not at all.
Or not at all. Yeah. I mean, my mother always used to say to me, if you've got nothing nice to say, say nothing.
Say anything.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes, I had that one too.
Well, you sound like you wouldn't say anything nasty about anybody, Alison.
I don't really. It takes a lot to push my buttons.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah, you do sound like a sweetheart.
Yeah. Well, I haven't always been this way, but I find that since I've kind of mellowed a bit, I think.
Yeah, I think as we get older, we care less, don't we, about stuff as well. We let it go quicker.
Yeah, I think I have a sort of healthier outlook on life now.
Yeah.
Whereas I was too conscious of things that weren't really there before.
Completely agree with you. Yeah.
I was kind of building up in my head or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's exactly the same journey that I've been on. It really is. It is. Yeah. It's so nice. It's such a relief, isn't it? Actually, it's absolutely brilliant. It's wonderful to talk to you, Alison. It always is.
And you.
You have a lovely rest of the day, and keep out of the sunshine with that lovely pale skin. Right, I'm going to take a very quick break, but I will be back in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. This is Talk, and it is Petrie with you. And I'm going to get back to your calls in just a little while. But we are heading off to America again. And this time we're talking to the fabulous Ryan Harris, who's a US journalist and broadcaster. And, of course, if you've been watching the show, you'll know him already. Good to see you, Ryan. How are you?
I'm well, enjoying the very balmy 39.5 degrees Celsius that we're having here right now.
It's a different heat. It's a different. You've been in the UK a lot. You know, if you're in the UK and it's 29, it's hotter than 39 where you are.
It is, yeah, you're right about that. But of course, I also started my news career in Palm Springs out in the California desert. So call me when it's 126 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't need, this is just nothing to you. Let's talk about Trump. I think the last time we spoke, we talked about the reflecting pool and how it filled with algae and was peeling. Well, since then, of course, Donald Trump has come out and said that was pure vandalism, that it was perfect, and it was nothing to do with the job that was done. It was vandalism, and in fact, he was very graphic about a slit down the middle of that had been done with a knife or a box cutter, very specific, 300 metres long, and feet long. Was it 300 feet long? And of course, it's now had to be emptied again. And is there any sign of this knife attack on the pool?
You know, I honestly don't think so. I mean, we know because we talked about it before. You know, the thing wasn't allowed to cure properly. They dumped really high concentrate hydrogen peroxide in it to try to kill the algae, and that caused, we think, the paint to maybe thin out a little bit because hydrogen peroxide will do that. If there is indeed a 350 foot or whatever the distance is cut in the thing, there's a possibility that it was caused by the movement of the granite plates upon which this surface was placed, because there's slabs of granite, and what you have there is movement of that granite, and it's certainly possible that something caused that movement. I don't know, possibly a motorcade of heavy vehicles driving over them and causing them to shift is one theory there. So who knows, but you know, there's been no real evidence of any vandalism there. There has been about a half dozen arrests, and most notably is the one involving former Olympic canoe racer David Hearn. He's out on a bike ride one day because he lives near DC, stops at the reflecting pool, sees the floating piece on top, and wants to just reach in and touch it. And there's video, and you can see he just touches it, doesn't take any out. And he's under arrest and facing this felony charge of vandalism because, of course, Jeanine Pirro, the former judge and Fox News host, who is now the prosecutor for the District of Columbia, the U.S. attorney there, placed the value of the vandalism at over $1,000, which puts it over the felony threshold. So
that'll be laughed out of court, though, if there's video of him just touching it. And also, there'll be so many scientists and specialists who would say that this has got nothing to do with this guy. I mean, it's going to be laughed out of court, surely.
You know, one would think so. I mean, that's happened several times just in the past week when it comes to cases involving the Trump administration. You know, he files a lawsuit against the IRS, which is also under his control. And the judge took a look at that one and said, no, this is baloney. You're manipulating the court system here. And that's just one of, a number of examples of where they try to take these things to court, again, with no real evidence. And the judges, and many of them Trump appointees, look at it and say, no, we're not doing it.
It's just really fascinating that rather than just accept that maybe that this was a botched job by his friend, or maybe, it was rushed at, rather than, he doesn't even have to take the blame for it, but he's so determined that it's always somebody else's fault. I mean, it's like the Qatari jet that he was gifted, that he had retrofitted at a cost of, I think, nearly $1 billion US to make it into Air Force One, and he had to abandon it in Turkey. And rather than accept that maybe there's a security issue with accepting that gift, which is apparently why it was abandoned in Turkey, he's having the people who wrote the newspaper story about the abandonment of the plane sued.
And not just any newspaper. We're talking about the New York Times, which is one of the largest newspapers, if not the largest newspaper in the entire United States. And he's just adding that to the existing lawsuit he has against the New York Times. But to your point about the security issues, they went through and refitted the plane to make it part of the fleet. Remember, it's only Air Force One if the president is on board. So that's, it's whatever the tail number is otherwise. But they didn't add any of the extra security features that are on the existing, the Air Force jets that are used as Air Force One. There's 2 of them. And like once every 6 months, one of them is completely taken apart and put back together. We're talking about a Boeing 747.
Wow.
Completely taken apart and
every
put back
part
together.
Of it.
Every piece. All yes, because they have to make sure. And the concern was, because of this ongoing war in Iran, that they might try to fire drones at this plane, and it wouldn't have the countermeasures on board to battle them off if he was on this this Qatari jet. So they went with one of the others from the fleet.
I can't believe they take that entire plane apart. That's extraordinary. I mean, that really is. So they just flip-flop. One is 6 months, then the next one next 6 months, and...
Well, with the exception of the time the one is, being dismantled for servicing, there's usually both are ready to go at any given time, as well as a fleet of smaller planes with that same, light blue, what they call the Kennedy era livery on the side with the United States of America. And when I was working in Palm Springs, George W. Bush came, and the airport runway required him to use the old 707 to land there. So that was Air Force One that day.
Wow, I mean, that's mind-blowing. Let's move on and have a look at daylight saving, because there's been quite a lot of conversations in this country about when the clocks go forward, when the clocks go back. The only way I can remember it is using the Americanism for autumn, which is the fall. So I know then the clocks go backwards in the fall, because it's like falling over, and spring forward. So that's the only way I remember. I still can't remember the days it happens, and it always comes as a great surprise. But America is looking to scrap that completely.
Yes, and this is a discussion, as it has been, like you say, in the UK, that's gone on for a long time. And by the way, the phrase we use, spring ahead, fall back, so you can remember that easily. And several states have voted on measures. California is one of them. A few years ago, they put a referendum on the ballot, and people voted for it to stick with daylight saving time. But with the exception of Hawaii, which doesn't participate, most of Arizona, and believe it or not, only certain counties in Indiana, I don't know how you keep track of that one, they don't participate. The entire country, the rest of the country does, and it takes an act of Congress to overturn it, which honestly I don't believe will ever happen. Now, it's passed the House. Its future in the Senate is uncertain. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But of course, it brings up the debate. It causes health problems, and there are more heart attacks after this happens because it interferes with our sleep patterns. Or, people, it's too dark in the morning when people are driving, and there are more crashes. And then, of course, there's 3 options here you have to keep in mind. Keep it as it is, where we change the clocks, stick with standard time, or stick with saving time. And the one argument that actually sort of sways me toward keeping it as it is that the entire swath of the northern United States in the wintertime wouldn't get light until after 9 a.m. That feels like a problem to me.
Yeah. It's just a very strange thing, isn't it? Because the daylight saving was put in place, I think, for farm workers. In the same way the long summer holidays for children was put in place so that they could help gather the crops in farms. That's why traditionally that they have those extra weeks in the summer holidays. So they are quite old-fashioned, these things, but we are used to them. And yeah, I think maybe I don't think it'll ever change here either. Mitch McConnell, I'm absolutely fascinated by this story. Any further proof of life?
Well, we haven't actually seen any proof of life that I would think a reasonable person would consider a proof of life. What I have seen, and I don't know how true it is, but people talking about that photo of him having been photoshopped, and they show an image of him, I believe, sitting in the Oval Office in that very outfit, but wearing a blue sport coat.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And the collar on one side, it sort of lines up with that photo. Not to mention, he looks about 10 years younger. And of course, he's the happiest boy in the hospital there, which I can't imagine. Not to mention, he's in the hospital. Why isn't he in a hospital gown? You know, I mean, there's so many
And why is he
questions
holding the
about
newspaper like that? Nobody holds a newspaper like that.
You don't hold the newspaper like this when you read it?
No, funnily enough, I don't. No.
Up in front of your face like this? It reminds me of my grandmother when she wouldn't wear her glasses. You know, no, there is no proof of life that's really been shown as far as I'm concerned. The governor of Kentucky, which Mitch McConnell represents in the Senate, Andy Beshear, says he wants to meet with him to prove that he's alive. And the main reason, and it matters because we're just a little more than 2 weeks away, if he is not, if he's brain dead and unable to continue his service in the Senate, and they're just keeping him alive by machine, I honestly don't know if that counts as keeping him alive and he gets to hold the seat. But if he's dead, then they have to until August 3rd to set a special election to fill the remainder of his term, and then they have the election in November for the seat, because I believe he was up for re-election this year. Or there's a lot more to it here, and it involves an election. And if it comes out that they have been keeping him alive by unusual means to try to undermine the election process, I guarantee you there will be hell to pay for somebody. Somebody's going to get in a lot of trouble for that.
It's just the most bizarre story, and so many questions that photograph brings up. And if he is that well, and like you said, the happiest boy in the hospital, why hasn't he left the hospital or appeared in front of a 2-minute video or agreed to a quick interview or anything so the public can see it?
And the other question is, his wife, Elaine Chao, who was one time actually Secretary of Transportation, he goes into the hospital and she travels to China for several days to meet with the Chinese vice president. What's going on there?
Yeah, well,
he's in crisis in the hospital.
She looks like she's, aged backwards as well from the last photograph that we've seen of her compared to that one. I'm so intrigued. I am absolutely entrenched in this story, Ryan. Just before I let you go, Donald Trump has won another trophy. I mean, this is the FIFA Peace Prize, and now this one, he's #1. Huge trophy. Tell me about it.
Apparently, there is a group called the Secret Handshake. I just pulled this up right before we went on because I hadn't seen quite enough on it. The Secret Handshake has awarded Mr. Trump the Iran War Participation Trophy for his enthusiastic involvement in the Iran War. And it's a large, oversized trophy placed somewhere in Washington, D.C. on public display. And of course, it has a QR code on one side of the the plaques for the secret handshake group. But yes, it's another one of these trophies that has been, invented, we'll say, in order to,
he might
for
like
whatever
it.
reason.
You
Yeah, that's exactly it.
He might like it. He might
it.
be thinking, "Oh, great! I've got another trophy. They love me." These are not the same people who put the Epstein and him hugging statue up. I can't remember what they were called, but there's a group of artists, isn't there? They keep putting these statues and things up.
A lot of creative artists,
which they're allowed to do. They're allowed to do that as well. It's not breaking any law. And finally, Trump is addressing the nation. So what are we expecting him to say? Is he just going to use it as a rally?
Well, that's the discussion there, because he has indicated that the talk will be about election security, and the expectation is he'll continue to spout the same, what they call the big lie about the 2020 election.
Well, it is a lie. It's been proven beyond doubt that he is lying about it.
Debunked dozens and dozens of times, Petrie. And it's interesting because I saw an article about it on a site that we in the American news business quite frequently go to for advice, called Pointer, where they were talking about, do the networks actually give him the live time if he's going to use it for political purposes rather than something like, say, informing us about the latest with the war in Iran, which we hope there will be a mention of there.
But I was wondering about that, because then he's using that TV time falsely. If he's going to use it for electioneering, then that's not what it was intended for.
No, and in fact, the FCC handbook says broadcasters are licensed in the public interest, and politics on live network television for free is not in the public interest. It's one-sided politics, and so it'll be interesting to see. My thing that I keep thinking about is, are they going to worry he'll try to pull the licenses of the stations they own? If they don't broadcast the thing, or who knows what. So, I honestly am a little bit concerned about this speech, because I don't know what he's going to say about protecting election security. I can tell you the Conservative Heritage Foundation, the folks behind Project 2025, did their own study, and in the last 25 years, the number of votes found to be fraudulent, and mind you, they were all found, is so infinitesimal that if they were in a single election for dog catcher, they couldn't change the results. So I don't know what the issue is, but
because he knows he's going to get a thrumping at the next election, and he's trying to set up the narrative that it's already faked and stolen from him. I mean, that is clear to me, since he still goes on about the 2020 election. It's extraordinary. Well, I'm fascinated to see what he says, and I will be following that as well. Ryan, it's lovely to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Ryan Harris there, US journalist and broadcaster. Back to you in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi, this is Talk, and it's Petrie, and we are talking about social media as Twitter has just reached the milestone of being 20 years old. So I'm asking you if social media is a force for good or evil, and I wonder if the world would be any worse if it was never invented. Paul is in Bolton. Morning, Paul.
Hi, Petrie. Okay.
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Thank you very much.
Good.
Gosh, I was shocked that Twitter's 20 years old because I remember when I first discovered.
Oh, I know, don't. I mean, all these. Yeah, 20 years.
Yeah, but when I discovered Facebook in 2007, and I thought Twitter came after that, so the fact that it came in 2006 has surprised me a bit. But then I did hear that, like a friend a few years back, she said that she was on Facebook from about 2005.
Oh,
and she said it was a bit of a different setup when it first got created, and then she started to begrudge it a bit more because it became a bit more mainstream.
Yeah. I mean, I think that when the whole idea of being able to, be that connected to people, I thought I did think, oh, that's nice, but then it just sort of, for me, it just went downhill, really.
Well, I joined Facebook at the end of 2009. I resisted it for a couple of years because I think it was around 2007 it became really popular. And I remember thinking, I don't want to do this. And then, like I said, I did, and I've become addicted. But I've got some flaws and against it because I don't know if you saw the drama recently called Tiptoe, did you? Russell T Davies, or you heard about it?
Yeah, definitely. I've started watching it, but I didn't like I was upset by it.
Yeah. Well, I run a group that was a former It's a Sin group, and it'd been a bit quiet, and then suddenly I changed the name to Tiptoe, and then we got another 10,000 members.
Oh, wow.
So I've used it as a bit as we're getting so much members in the last month, and it being so busy. I mean, I have people help me admin it, but I've used it as a force for good, like promoting charities and different things. More to do with LGBT, but not completely. I do care about other things. So that's a plus for me about social media, because it's a good way of promoting. And when it comes to even things like politics, you can knock on as many doors as you want, but you can still reach more people on social media with politics a lot quicker. Do you know what I mean?
It's true. I mean, I just wonder if it's the anonymity thing that creates the monsters then. If people had to take responsibility.
Well, that's the one thing I do. I mean, I do agree with the social media ban for younger people, but one thing that people forget is that actually it will cut a lot of this anonymity out if you've got to prove who you are. So it's actually a plus in terms of these trolls as well, because as you know what's gone on in the last week, and I won't go into that too much, but from both sides of the fence there's been trolling. There's been trolling about one person, and then after that, Carol Vorderman had a